Okay, welcome back. Some solo role Mangging, where we are taking a look at, boy, I cannot remember the name of this game. Ambition and Avarice, second edition. This is an OSR game, not very well known, from Greg Christopher, also known as Chubby Funster. And last time we looked at, character creation and all the classes, races, basic stuff like that, equipment, so on and so forth. Now we're going to be looking at the rules of play and magic and stuff. So, so it clearly defines a campaign within this game, which is where players decide where to go and what goals to pursue. The role of the judge is to provide meaningful options at this level. This is difficult because a lot of material must be created and only a portion of it will be used. This is a part of the game where prepared modules can help. If the judge is not able to provide this kind of choice, then you will limit play to a single adventure. However, be aware of the choice that is being lost. You are following a prepared path, not forging your own. Yes. So an adventure is a segment of gameplay with a clear overarching goal. And then an encounter is the basic building block of play. The judge will use encounters to craft their adventures and campaigns. We use the word encounter to describe a game scene with options for player agency. Here you go, Vanguard. When your party is outside of a settlement, you must choose a Vanguard. This is the character that is leading the group. They're at the front of the marching order, opening doors and making decisions. As you get close to an encounter, the judge will call for awareness tests from the Vanguard to determine what they see and hear. Success on these tests will give you information. You might hear the goblins behind the dungeon door or see the dust trails of the warband as it comes down the road. Okay. Reaction rolls. What does the subject of the encounter think about you? What is their reaction to your presence? Are they going to be instantly hostile? Do they need your help? For some encounters, the judge will simply decide how the non-player characters or monsters feel about you. This should be rare and have a reasonable explanation. For example, predatory wild animals like tigers are not going to be friendly to you. Thus, the judge can simply decide the reaction is hostile. However, the judge is encouraged not to make these decisions, but instead allow die rolls to determine how the encounter will play out. Especially in the case of intelligent beings, the judge should not know what is going to happen in advance. Yes, very important. So the judge rolls 2d6, and then roleplays the NPCs appropriately. You will not know the dice results. Only the Vanguard can have an impact on these rolls. Their charisma modifier is added to the dice results. A few special abilities or items can also have an impact. A lot of reaction rolls should result in relative neutrality. Just like when you meet someone in the real world, you tend to greet them with neither anger nor friendship. Most intelligent beings don't greet every new person with a drawn blade. Yeah, so it's a pretty standard table. Average of 2d6 is going to be 7. So that's going to be an aggressive and opportunistic reaction. But assuming your Vanguard is more charismatic, you might be able to average out to a cautious and defensive reaction from most things you meet, which is pretty advantageous. Dungeon encounters, wandering encounters, made using a d6. Result of 1 means you've encountered something. The frequency of these rolls is based on the openness of the area. An area with highly constricted movement like a dungeon might result in a roll every 3 to 6 turns, while travel across an open plain might only result in a roll every 6 to 12 turns. Interesting that he went with 3 to 6 turns in a dungeon. I see. If you are being noisy, the judge can make a d6 roll for a wandering encounter every turn. This should result in an attracted encounter. That's not uncommon. Usually what I've heard is every 2 turns. 3 to 6. I mean, 6 turns. That is a very infrequent. That means every hour, you have a 1 in 6 chance of running into something. That's really unlikely. It's an average of 6 hours in a dungeon just to find something, to bump into something. If you're not being noisy. Okay, a whole section on player ambitions. Interesting. That's a bit of a modern take on it, things, really, because the old school way is just your ambition is to get treasure. That's everyone's ambition, is to get treasure. That's all you want, is just to get treasure. Why you want to get treasure doesn't really matter. You just want treasure. But yeah, I suppose, I mean, once you start incorporating some of those, classes we saw, where you have, like, zealots that want to spread their faith, or, spies doing all these political machinations and things like that. And yeah, I mean, I don't think it's ever a bad idea to think a little bit about your character and get into the character a little bit. For old school gaming where lethality can be kind of high, death can come at any moment, it does lead players more towards just like, it doesn't matter, I don't care, I'm here to just get treasure, compared to like playing a modern D&D campaign where your character is going to survive for the next 30 sessions, and you want to tell a story with your character. Like, okay. Yeah, interesting. Movements. Okay, he goes with a 12-mile hex. Yeah, that's a pretty big hex. Oh, that's the distance from the center of the hex to the center of one of the sides. That's a 24-mile hex, then. Right? Usually you don't count from the center. Usually that's not how you do it. Let's see. Yeah, I've read this article about going for a 3-mile hex. And I can see the argument for that. Yeah, this is usually how it's measured. From one side to the other side, like that. That's 6 miles. If you do this diagonal one, 7 miles. But yeah, usually it's from like top to bottom, it's 6 miles. So he's proposing essentially then a 24-mile hex, which is massive. 510 square miles in each hex. That is pretty nuts. I don't think Axe goes with. I don't know if they even go by hexes. You always just mention miles. Yeah, I don't know if they ever mention. Oh no, 6-mile hex. Yeah, I mean that's generally the gold standard, and there's been a lot of articles like you saw for pushes towards smaller hexes and just making them more interesting and filled with stuff. And It depends. I mean, it sort of depends on the type of campaign that you want to run. If you want to run big, large-scale stuff across a continent, you kind of have to have bigger hexes, and that's clearly what he's going for here. Right, so when you go from one hex to the next, the judge will make a direction test for you against a DC from the chart to the right. If you fail this test, you drift off your heading by one hex phase. We do have a direction skill, so whoever has the highest wisdom, and hopefully you have a ranger. Most parties will take 1 to 2 days to move through one hex. Yeah. Yeah, because assuming you have an average dexterity, or you know, hopefully the slowest person has at least a 9 dexterity, so you can move 24 hexes, 24 miles per turn. Jeez, 24 miles per day, which is from one side of a hex to the other. Yeah. The average hex is packed with encounters. You might only engage in a few of those encounters while passing through the hex several times through the course of play. However, you may eventually want to completely clear a hex so you can establish your own domain. Clearing a hex is the process of eliminating the vast majority of monsters in the hex. Yeah. Each hex is presumed to contain enough monsters for one encounter per 10 square miles. If you eliminate half of these, that would be approximately 25 successful encounters. The final number is up to the judge, but that is a good estimate of how many encounters you need to win in the hex to consider it cleared for settlement. That's crazy. I mean, that's like a whole... Yeah, that's a mini campaign right there to clear out a hex. In real life, you would not randomly walk off in the woods and just hope to run into the right location. You would talk to people who know the area, maybe even hire a guide. You would draw up maps, or at least a set of directions on how to find the location you're looking for before setting out. You should begin playing a town where you can ask non-player characters for information. As you ask around, some NPCs will have a familiarity with the location. For example, the barkeep at the local tavern may have familiarity with the nearby abandoned keep. When you talk to him about it, you gain a familiarity point with respect to the keep. He gives you some vague directions and shares his belief that the place is abandoned. Later, you speak to a local priest, and he also has familiarity with the keep. By combining his direction with those from the barkeep, you now feel like you can actually find the keep if you set out overland. Okay, that's an interesting system. So, I don't think if you have 0 familiarity, you can just never find the place. I'm sure you can. But it probably would just be like wandering around. Like Axe, I think, has rules. Yeah, here, searching rules. So basically with Axe, if your party's moving at like, say, 24 miles per day, your search roll is a 16 or higher necessary. And that roll is made every hour by the DM. And every hour, if you don't find it, you know, there's going to be random wandering monsters encounter. Trigger 1 random encounter roll per hour while searching. I like that, yeah, even looking at this, just like, well, let me just take this roll from Axe to sort of supplement it. But anyways, yeah, I like that, yeah, you can build these familiarity points by talking to people or, yeah, finding other sources of information. So if you have 2 familiarity points, you can find the main entranceway without having to search for it. 4 points of familiarity, you get a rough idea of the major population groups. 6, the ability to find alternate entrances, hidden areas. 8, you get a rough number of major population. You get rough numbers of major population groups. 10, you get knowledge of a few powerful, unique entities. Now, 10 familiarity seems like you'd have to talk to like 10 different NPCs. Which seems like a lot. Weight. If you find a solid jade statue, it could weigh several 100 pounds and be very difficult to drag out of the dungeon, much less all the way back to town. Now, this concept, right? This concept exists in basically every OSR game. Or it should. If you find a solid jade statue. Like, you're the DM for any game. Shadow Dark, Tales of Argosa, Dungeon Crawl Classics, OSE, BFRPG, whatever. You know, regardless of the rules of encumbrance and how much you can carry, the DM should make it difficult to abscond with a solid jade statue or whatever. So that doesn't matter. I mean, that has really no tie to, like, the fact that we keep track of the weight of all of our equipment and everything. Now, it does get into, when you get smaller than that, that's when you get into the nitty-gritty. So a treasure chest stuffed with 5,000 silver coins. Now, in this system, we know the exact weight of that. The coins alone weigh 100 pounds. And we know exactly when we're going to be encumbered and all that, based on the weight. I don't know if any system would say, okay, you can just have 5,000 silver coins and move. Well, no, I think there definitely are systems that just do not give a shit about your coins and how much they weigh. So that would really be up to the DM to be like, well, actually, I think that's too much. Which could feel arbitrary depending on the players, depending on the game. But, you know, a big aspect of old school RPGs and why they're entertaining is that sort of somewhat degree of verisimilitude, that somewhat degree of grounded realism, you know. Even if you're not keeping track of the specific weight of everything you're carrying, most people that play these kind of games do like some of that degree of being grounded. So, yeah, I mean, for me personally, like I said, I like gear slots. I like having a number of slots for equipment based on your strength. And I like coins just taking up a certain number of slots once you have a certain number of coins. Depending on the game that you're playing, you know, that number can differ. I think usually when we play now, we go with like 400 coins is one slot. And so, let's see. Grug has 16 strength. Your encumbrance is actually not based on your strength, is it? Wasn't it based on constitution? Yeah. Based on constitution. So, okay. So he's got a slightly above average constitution. So they're letting him carry 70 pounds without being encumbered. So for silver coins, we'll say 1 pound is 50, so 100 pounds, yeah, 5,000, right. Let's see, 50 times, let's say 70, 3,500. So if he's carrying nothing else on his entire body, which is impossible because he wouldn't be able to hold the coins, so he'd have to have the backpack, which weighs 2 pounds. But let's just hand wave it a little bit. So let's say he can carry 3,500 silver without being encumbered. If I were playing a different game and I divided by this by 400, yeah, okay, so he could actually almost carry double that amount of coins in a game like Tales of Argosa with my rules. I think... Well, actually, I think Tales of Argosa specifically does 200 coins to a slot, and I expanded that. So, yeah. That would actually be fairly close, but that would be based on his strength, not his constitution in that game. But yeah, fairly close. That's, again, if he was carrying nothing else on his person. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't really jive with the tracking of weight. And I think that for a lot of things, the really heavy things, you would make it a difficulty to deal with and remove the dungeon regardless of how you're tracking carrying capacity. There's a reason why the equipment chapter has entries for donkeys, horses, carts, wagons, and various boats. You gain experience points when you recover treasure. This is different from simply acquiring it. Recovering treasure involves bringing it from an isolated location into the general economy. Pretty standard stuff. You gain an amount of XP equal to the gold piece value of the treasure recovered. This measure of progress is flexible because you can get the treasure without engaging in combat if you are clever. Yep, that's pretty standard. Also, when you defeat a monster, you gain XP based on the hit dice of the defeated foes. This is divided but equally between all participants. Yep. Some judges may choose to award experience to their players for completing quests or solving particularly challenging puzzles. This is an arbitrary reward that we generally discourage, because the judge tends to be too generous and it can lead to overpowered characters. Yeah. Okay. Pretty standard old school stuff. So when you level up, you get another d6 of hit points. Every third level, you can raise one ability by 1 point. Mundane characters get 3 character points. Spontaneous spellcasters also gain new spells every level. Yep. So you need 1,000 XP to get to level 1. Pretty standard stuff. If you fall all the way down to 0 hit points, you must make a Constitution saving throw versus 10. Failure results in permanent death, unless saved from death by a zealot. Yeah, okay. Success on the saving throw means you are unconscious but bleeding out. You will remain unconscious and take 1 more point of damage every 6 turns until you drop below -10, at which point you will perish. Character that is bleeding out can be stabilized by a magical healing spell or successful medical treatment by an ally. Wisdom test versus DC 15. Okay, well, it's nice to be able to stabilize. Even though that is a tough roll. By far, the easiest way to recover hit points is through magical means. If you are at negative hit points, it is the only way to get back on your feet quickly. However, there will be times when magical healing is unavailable or too expensive. You recover 1 hit point overnight if you get at least 8 hours of quality sleep. You can recover 1 hit point per day of light duty. No combat or exploration. You may travel by riding in a wagon or similar conveyance, but not by riding your own horse. You can also cook a few light meals, organize treasure, and so forth. You are not pushing the envelope. Complete rest regains 1d6 hit points plus con mod. Okay. I mean, it's not the most harsh healing rules I think I've seen. It's definitely not. I mean, it's already sort of nicer than Tales of Argosa is. Tales of Argosa is like 1 hit point overnight, 2 if you're in like a really safe location, a comfortable safe location like an inn, and that's it. Unless you rest for an entire week, in which case you're fully healed. Ability damage can happen. If you continue to go on adventures, ability scores heal at a rate of 1 per season. If you spend a full month on light duty, recover 1 point. If you're a complete rest, you'll recover 1 point every 3 weeks. Yeah, that is pretty slow. Magical healing's the way to go. Skill tests are used to determine the outcomes of tasks that require more than just a few seconds to perform. Catching an object thrown at your head might only take an instant, but working to open an old rusty lock with a set of lockpicks takes time and focus. Each use of a skill test requires at least a full turn. Yeah, I guess that's an easy way to remember if a skill test is involved or not, is if it's going to take 10 minutes or not. Breakage represents the act of smashing your way through an obstacle, like a locked door or chest. Success will destroy the obstacle. Could be noisy. It has a DC based on the material. Climbing is the act of moving up, over, and or across a surface that is difficult to traverse. Again, DC based on the surface type. Direction is the act of choosing a safe route through unknown and or difficult terrain. Dominance is the act of bringing a magical force under your control. It's used frequently by conjurers and other spellcasters that engage in magical summoning. Examination is the act of closely studying an object, room, or its contents. You must have a specific goal, such as trying to discern the nature of a poison or what ailment is spreading among the villagers. You cannot use examination as a general approach to searching a room or location. Again, very key point of old school gaming is if you're searching a room, you're telling the DM where you're searching, and there's no dice roll really, except for the stupid thing where of finding secret doors or whatever that a thief gets. Foraging is the act of hunting for food and locating water sources in the wild. Successful tests will result in acquiring rations and drinks. Knowledge is the act of remembering information. You can attempt the test, see if you can recall any relevant information about a problem at hand. Leadership, the act of inspiring and managing others. Restore a retainer with broken morale, also used as part of the retainer recruitment process. Mechanics is the act of manipulating or bypassing a mechanical device, such as a trap or lock. Stealth, the act of concealing your presence. You can only maintain half your cautious speed. The judge will roll for you in secret, and they may modify the roll based on circumstances. If successful, nearby creatures will be unaware of your presence. You can pass by undetected. That, I think, is a very good thing to include. I think most systems should have that, where the DM rolls for you for your stealth. It's a bit antithetical, I think, to the way modern gaming is, or I guess for most gaming, really, where players just kind of roll everything, and players like to roll. But I think the DM rolling in secret for you for that is pretty pivotal. In fact, I think there's a lot of things that the DM should roll for you in secret, so that you can't be influenced by a success or failure result. Survival. All of the rules in this section are optional. Using them will make your campaign more realistic, but they involve tracking resources, time, and other variables. Interesting. Okay. Each character must consume at least one ration and one drink per day in order to stay alive. That's already sort of probably a divisive decision right there, because most games are just going to go with rations. Even fucking Axe doesn't track drinks. I think Axe just says your ration includes beverage, like includes a supply of water in it. No, I guess it doesn't. Maybe I'm wrong, because I guess it does include water skin. Wonder if I've just been ignoring that. There's definitely other games that rations just includes a supply of water. Or maybe that's Shadow Dark I'm thinking of. Or Tales of Argosa I'm thinking of. Oh, a typical ration consists of 2 pounds of food and 1 gallon of water. One stone. Interesting. Well, this is 1 week of rations weighing 1 stone. So I think that might be the only the food. I think I've been playing it wrong. Well, I've been playing it probably the way Tales of Argosa does, because I don't really want to keep track of water. I think it's fine to keep track of water if you're in a setting or something where water is hard to come by. Like, if you're doing anything in a desert or arid environment, it's like, yeah, it makes sense to be way more conscious of your water and how you get it and, you know, all that. Most of the time, though, it's like, I'm lucky if I get people to even care about rations. Like, I'm not adding on water on top of that. So, yeah. Yeah. Oh, and you have to consume 3 rations and drinks per day in order to heal hit points normally. Jesus. Now I have 7 days of rations. So technically I have 21 rations. I have 21 rations. But then I only have, what, 5 drinks? Yeah, I have 5 drinks. So you're consuming 3 of those per day. So you're going to be foraging for water, like, every day. Which, again, it makes sense. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that's very realistic and everything. But that's a lot of bookkeeping for a game mostly about, you know, swinging swords and firing off spells and going into dungeons and things like that. You're talking about a very sort of time-consuming survival simulator, which is not everyone's cup of tea. But that's why it says all these rules are optional. So the judge assigns a die value to each region of the world to indicate the relative abundance of food in that area, another die value to indicate the presence of water. Rich lowland might have a value of D10 for both food and water, while a frozen tundra might have a food value of D4 but a water value of D12. You can forage by devoting an entire day to the process and rolling the food and water die for the region. If you have the foraging skill, you can add it to the die results yielded above. If you have a ranged weapon, use it to hunt for food, you may add your dexterity modifier to the result on the food die. However, you must expend an amount of ammunition equal to twice the final food result. Yeah. Okay. It all makes sense. And again, like, if I'm playing in a campaign and the DM is like, hell yeah, we're doing full survival, boys. And all, you know, all the other guys are like, yeah, we're doing full survival, let's go. It's like, all right, I'm in. If everyone's on board, I'm in. But I just know that of all the people I know that would play, I'm the only one reasonably interested in such a thing. And I'm not even going to remotely try to, like, push it. So, again, I think I have it pretty good with my family when I'm DMing Tales of Argosa mixed with Axe, where I can get them to care about rations. I can get them to carry rations, track rations, but it's literally just like, okay, it's the end of the day, everyone eat a ration. Like, I'm not doing a 3 time per day shit, and we're not tracking water or anything like that. And depending on the nature of, like, the campaign and stuff, if they're near a town, and they just keep, like, going out from the town and stuff, honestly, rations don't come up that often. Because usually you're back in town, and I just don't care if you're in a town. So it's, yeah, that's what it is. Sleep. Character needs 6 hours of sleep every day in order to function effectively. Anytime you fail to meet this standard, temporarily lower all ability scores by 1 for the entire following day. If you go without sleep for 2 days, or so if you get 5 hours of sleep 2 days in a row, you have a -5 for the entire following day. I think some people might disagree with that, but maybe those people are operating with -5 to all their ability scores. Each successive day without sleep results in another -4 cumulative penalty applied. Until you hit 0 for your strength, dex, or con, and then you just fall asleep. Again, I think people would disagree. If these penalties reduce intelligence, wisdom, or charisma to 0, the character becomes insane. That's crazy. Physical exertion in a punishing environment causes fatigue. While exploring in a dungeon or traversing rough terrain, you must rest for 1 turn every 5 turns engaged in activity. If you're engaging in a lot of combat, the judge may demand more frequent rest. Every time you avoid necessary rest, you lose 1 hit point to represent the strain. So, this is something I've never done. I've never enforced. This is not a rule unique to Ambition and Avarice, like, at all. Like, it's an old school rule. I've just never enforced it. I think I just don't think about it too much, and I don't track. I don't keep good enough track of time to do it. Like, you basically need, like, yeah, you need, like, multiple sort of clocks, essentially. Like, you got to keep track of their torch timers, you know, you're keeping track of random encounters, you're keeping track of when they need to rest. And I just saw a thread all about this, about, like, it feels really sort of lame and takes away their agency if 5 turns go by and it's like, you rest now. You must rest. The top reply there was basically like 2 turns before they would need to rest, you basically inform them like, hey, you're getting a little tired. I think it's a rule that honestly I could go my whole life without ever enforcing and ever doing in practice. Again, it's a rule that makes sense. It's realistic. I don't know if it adds any fun to the game, though. It's always the question I have to ask. It's like, does anybody enjoy that? I mean, it sort of slows down the dungeon crawl slightly, and gives potentially another random encounter check while they're not progressing through the dungeon and they're just resting. So, I guess, but I think it's generally a rule I could just ignore. Athletics. There will be a number of tasks in the game that will be taxing on your body. Judge can apply a penalty to these rules based on your encumbrance level. Yeah, okay. I mean, that's not anything too wild. Impact save. Some items are easily broken. We model the risk that your items might break with a special saving throw called an impact save. This is a saving throw with no modifier against a DC based on the strength of the item. It's a lot, man. That's another thing that I get it. It's realistic, makes sense. I don't know if I'll ever do it. So, I mean, say you fall 5 feet. You then have to have the judge roll for every single thing that's like in your backpack and what you're carrying. So, yeah, I mean, like every potion, you're gonna have to roll. And it's crazy because DC 18, there's no modifiers. So basically, if you fall 4 feet, every single glass item in your bag is probably going to break. Unless this is specifically stuff that you're carrying in your hands, but I don't know why that would be realistic. It should be everything in your bag, but it seems kind of wild. I don't know. I guess it makes sense, but it's too much for me, man. Old age, if your campaign goes on a long time. If you do not want to keep track of daily expenditures on food, alcohol, lodging, horseshoe, and other basic expenses, you can model these costs through monthly upkeep. This is paid in advance to the judge, and it will purchase you a lifestyle quality as shown in the chart below. This chart is important not just for your own character, but for your retainers as well. What lifestyle are your retainers living on the salary you pay them? So, if you put 2 gold in per month, you're living the life of a beggar. 8 gold per month is the life of a commoner. 25 per month, skilled laborer. 120 master craftsman, 500 minor nobility, 2,500 in true nobility, 12,000 is royalty. Yeah, daily expenditures versus monthly upkeep. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I kind of lean towards daily expenditures just because day to day can change so much throughout a campaign, that it just seems more fair. And I don't know how that really, how that works alongside like keeping track of your rations and water. Like, I don't think those correspond. So you could spend like 25 gold at the start of the month, and then you spend most of the month out in the wilderness eating rations, and it's just like, I don't know. So for me personally, I'd go with just daily normal stuff. But at the same time, I don't keep track of shit like horseshoes and stuff. So there's that. But yeah, I figure like lodging and stuff. Food, it's really hard to say. We're not playing a game where we keep track of like your hunger rates and stuff. And like I said, usually I'll do like 1 ration at the end of the night. But yeah, usually like if you're in a town, it's hard to say, I guess. Like right now, the campaign I'm running for my family, they're in like their hometown. That's what they're working out of. So they're in their hometown. I'm not, they're not paying for their houses. I don't really care about like the food they eat at home and stuff. Like we're just hand waving all that. But in another town that they know belong, they're staying at an inn. Yeah, I'm gonna make them pay each day for the inn, and I suppose if I think of it, yeah, I'm gonna make them eat a meal at least once per day. Yeah, I prefer daily stuff, but that's me. And again, I don't go into the nitty gritty. Vision and light. Light of a torch extends only 30 feet in every direction. Lantern is much better, providing up to 40 feet, but only a narrow cone about 5 feet wide. Impaired vision is a -3 penalty and tests that depend on vision. Blah, blah, blah. Monsters can have infravision or dark vision. Yeah. Hazards. Searching. It's assumed that your character is always looking around cautiously. You never have to declare proactively that you are doing it. The awareness test is used to detect something quickly, like a tripwire before you step on it. It is not a searching test. If you say, I look in that barrel, or I look in the back corner of the room, the judge will tell you what is there. These kind of searches do not take up much game time. If you cannot think of any specific places to search and you feel certain something is there, you can declare that your character is searching the area thoroughly. There are no rolls required to search. You can conduct a good search and you will find whatever is there. However, it will take up your time. The general rule is it takes about 1 turn to thoroughly search a 20 by 20 room. Okay. I like that. I mean, I like that way of thinking of it. So if a player is very specific and say that they're looking in a specific spot in the room, it basically just happens. There's no rolls and it doesn't take much time at all. But most of the time players, at least my players, aren't very specific at all and they want to do thorough searches. And yeah, that takes about 10 minutes. And that's usually how I run things anyways, but yeah, it's good to just state all that. Traps. When someone is approaching a trap, the judge will often call for an awareness test. They might add a bonus or penalty reflecting the degree to which the trap is concealed. If successful, the person will see the trap in plenty of time to stop and avoid triggering it. If they fail their awareness test, the victim will only notice the trap as they trigger it. Right. So again, that's a bit more of a modern take on it, on traps, where it's an actual like attribute test to see if you notice it based on your wisdom score. The old school way of just doing it is like you have a 2 in 6 chance or something of like triggering it, or it depends on the thing. Traps are not very good in old school gaming as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, that's just the kind of modern expected way that we prefer. Many people prefer. Even at the point where a trap has been triggered, you may be able to make a saving throw to dodge the effects. You have 2 possible chances to avoid traps, noticing them and dodging them. If you fail both of those, you might still survive if you can endure the damage, but your fate is sealed. If a trap is detected but not triggered, you can then disarm it using a mechanics test. Failure will usually trigger the trap. Locked doors, chests, mechanics test, blah, blah, blah. You can bash it with a breakage test, but it's loud. Extreme weather conditions. Falling damage. 1d6 points of damage per 10 feet of distance falling. Fallen, yep. It's pretty standard, except this is a d6 hit die game, so it's a little bit more brutal. A dex saving throw will let you roll as you land and take half damage. Any fall of 100 feet or greater is automatically fatal unless you have some kind of magical protection. Now it says a dex saving throw. What's the DC on that? Was that ever defined? Oh, basically anywhere from 10 to 20. Yeah. Okay. And that was the same thing for the other tests, somewhere between 10 and 20. Okay, so if it's just like a 10-foot fall, it's obviously going to be 10. And then, I don't know, just add 1 every 10 feet after, I guess. A roundabout. You will take 1 hit point of damage when abruptly falling to the floor from a standing position. Jesus, that could kill somebody. I guess it could kill somebody. Various other things that are kind of what you'd expect. You can get addicted to drugs. You gotta roll an addiction test. Test against DC 5 should be made per dose of the drug consumed. Diseases. Okay, so it's mostly... Seems like it's really just ability score damage of various types. Retainers. Okay, so henchmen are the simple combatants. Mundane characters recruit fighter henchmen. They're simple fighting men with a +1 to hit bonus. Proficiency with 1 type of weapon determined by the judge. Magical creatures recruit adept henchmen. Simple magic users. They use the same casting methods as the character that hired them. You must pay henchmen a regular salary negotiated on hire. You bear the cost of outfitting them with armor and weapons. You have a single hit die and a random alignment. Blah, blah, blah. It's mostly repeated information. You can directly interact with a number of retainers up to your charisma score. To control large numbers of people, you'll need to give freedom to your retainers to hire and control their own subordinates. This is how a large organization is made. For example, a player character with a charisma of 15 has established a stronghold. They have 3 henchmen, 1 hireling, and 1 companion that travel with them on quests. Oh, right. So it's equal to your charisma score. So Grug can handle up to 8 retainers of varying types. Okay. New henchmen and hirelings are recruited by paying a crier to travel around and tell people about the job opportunity. This costs at least 10 gold pieces per month. Right. So again, similar to Axe, it's based on monthly, a monthly time cycle. So if you're in a town of 500 to 2,500 people, every month 2d6 retainers will answer your call. You can also post public notices advertising your recruiting opportunity. This will add another 50 gold pieces per month. Jeez. And bring in another 1d4 people. You can also command one of the existing henchmen or hireling in your employ to seek out good applicants. Gives you another 1d8 to recruit, but it will deprive you of that character services for a full month. Companions are not recruited by using criers, posting notices, or sending out agents. They are unique characters and must be recruited personally by your player character. You must find them in the course of your travels, decide to offer them a position in your party, and then proceed to the hiring test. Yeah, okay. Wages, the hiring test, which is 2d6 plus your charisma mod. If you get 6 or more, the hireling is willing to work for you. But at double the wages, and with only 5 morale. You have to actually get 12 or higher on the hiring test to get just the base wage. Wow, okay. That's good to know. Combat. Oh boy. Okay, there are 2 main ways of handling combat: theater of the mind or a battle map. Theater of the mind is verbal and abstract. The judge describes the situation, you describe your actions, and they tell you how the enemy reacts. With a battle map, the judge will actually draw out the battle area and use it to represent combat. Many old school role players prefer the theater of the mind format. Yep. Increases immersion, blah, blah, blah. With all that said, there are also advantages to using a battle map. First, the locations of all combatants are perfectly clear. There will be no arguments about, oh, I didn't realize he was moving up on the left. No one will forget what the judge said about a particular enemy's movement. Second, the distances between combatants will be easy to calculate. You know how far your light source extends. You know whether targets are in range or out of range. You know where the tip of your polearm can reach. Finally, some players spend a lot of time and energy painting miniatures, and they relish the chance to put them on the table. Regardless of your choice, your character has a front, flank, and rear. Your front is the area in front of your character, where you can easily attack and defend. Your flank is the side of your character, it's harder to protect from attacks, and your vision is limited. Your rear is the area you cannot see, and thus from which you cannot defend against incoming attacks. When attacked from the flank or rear, you cannot gain any AC bonus from a shield or weapon. When attacked from the rear, reduce your armor's AC bonus by half. Rounded down. Jesus. While on target's flank, you gain +2 to stealth skill rolls against target. Rear, you gain +5 stealth skill rolls against target. Right, so the first round is called the surprise round. Characters that succeed on an awareness test versus DC 15 can take action. It's pretty, again, when you're dealing with a D20 system where most characters are going to have like +0 or +1, it's just very random and arbitrary feeling. You know, compared to my guy is really, he's quick on his feet, he's alert, he's on average, he's gonna, most of the time he's gonna be able to go before everyone else. He's just good like that. Here, that's going to be very, very, very rarely the case. Most of the time, it's just going to be like, well, I didn't roll well this time. Well, I rolled well this time. That doesn't matter. Grug could be quite quick. He could be slow. On average, he's going to be slow, just like everybody else. So it's less like, I'm better at this. I'm more alert than you. I'm, quicker on my feet. It's more just like, well, I was slightly lucky this time. So I like the idea, theoretically, of this surprise round thing, but just due to the way the system's set up and everything, it's mostly just like, well, I got randomly lucky. It would help a little bit if it was a bell curve kind of roll, like a 2d6 kind of roll or something like that. Which would be an easy enough change to make. Like, honestly, if you just change it to a 2d6 and you have to get 10 or higher, that anybody that has like a +2 wisdom or something is going to be fairly likely to succeed on that a lot of the time. Maybe that's overpowered. You could set it to 11 or maybe even 12, but I think 12 would be not in the spirit of things. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there was a class that got... Well, I guess technically we get +1 to awareness test before combat. I don't know if that includes this. This seems to be part of combat. So I don't know if the Savage was intended to be part of that. Wish there was better bookmarks. No, I don't think it's related to surprise. I think it's awareness test to like detect an ambush or something like that. Because you can often hear and even smell their opponents as distances are closed. I really don't think it counts. All right. Any spellcasters who want to cast a spell during a round must declare the exact spell they're casting. In the first round, it must be declared before initiative is rolled. This timing is very important. If the spellcaster takes damage from any attack before their spell comes into effect, the spell is disrupted and lost. However, the casting will still count against their daily casting limit. Again, this is just like Axe, just like first edition AD&D. It's rough. It requires a lot of investment for a spellcaster to actually cast something in combat. But it means it's very interruptible for like enemy spellcasters. You can also declare an aimed attack during this phase or perform actions requiring 2 or more individuals coordinating efforts. They will resolve when your side takes action. Initiative is a d6, side where the higher number goes first. If all party members on one side were able to act during the surprise round, that side gets +2 to initiative. Wow, that would be impressive. Taking actions. You can accomplish one of the following actions in a round. You can move up to your combat movement rate, make a standard attack, two-handed attack, or attack with 2 weapons. You can move and make a touch attack or begin a grappling attack. You can move and make a fighting retreat. You can sprint up to 3 times your combat movement rate. Move up to half your rate and threaten anyone moving within their reach. Finish making an aimed attack with a ranged or thrown weapon declared earlier in the round. Finish casting a spell declared earlier in the round. Or you can seize the initiative to try to gain the upper hand and change your initiative value mid-combat. Well, that's interesting. Checking morale. At the end of a round in which leader of the opposition is killed, strongest, most powerful opponent is killed, half the opponents have been killed, and the opponents are greatly outnumbered. Also, for retainers if bad stuff happens. Including an undead with more than 4 hit dice is spotted. Okay. Yeah, talking about retreating and how important that is. Standard attack. Blah, blah, blah. you get a 20, you get a crit, you automatically deal max damage possible. Two-handed attack lets you double your strength modifier for the hit and damage roll. That's pretty nice. I gotta say, that's pretty nice. And you crit on a 19 or 20. Dang! Attacking with two weapons instead of a shield. You get a single attack, but you get a +2 bonus to hit. Aimed attack. Can only be performed with a ranged weapon. You must declare the aimed attack against an opponent at the start of the round. If anyone deals damage to you before your action in the initiative order, your attack is disrupted and never occurs. If you're able to avoid disruption, you gain a +3 bonus to hit. So you cannot actually shoot as a standard thing. The standard attack... Oh, no, you can. Okay, yes, you can. I was about to say. So you can just do a standard shot in the middle of the round like normal, or you can declare at the start of the round you're going to shoot. The benefit of that is you get a +3 bonus to hit, which is pretty awesome. The negative is if you take any damage before your turn, you lose your turn, essentially. Okay. You can make ranged attacks into a melee, but you risk hitting one of your own party members. It's a -3 penalty to hit. Astute players will notice that an aimed attack essentially negates this penalty. Yeah, I see. Grappling, always a fun concept in any RPG. Resolve a grapple by first making a touch attack, which is basically, it's just an attack versus the target without their armor benefit. So they still get the dex mod and the shield. So the margin of success on this roll becomes a penalty to all future d20 rolls by the target until a grapple is broken or abandoned. Future rounds, you can make another touch attack to tighten your grip or attack them with a small weapon. Opponent can also attack you with a small weapon, and they can make touch attacks against you with the margin of their success if they succeed being removed from the penalty you're opposing against them. If they completely remove the penalty in this manner, they can choose to either break free of your grip or return the grapple against you. If the total penalty becomes larger than the target's strength, they are pinned and completely unable to take actions. Thus, a conventional wrestling match would consist of a series of successful grappling rolls until one wrestler is completely overwhelmed and pinned. Yeah, okay. Seize the initiative. You raise your group's initiative score by 1d4. If this adjustment causes your side's initiative to exceed an opponent's, your party will act first on the following round and effectively take 2 actions in a row. You can only make 1 attempt to improve initiative per round. Threatening. If you want to hold your attack and wait for an opportunity to strike, and you choose to threaten as your combat action. So this is like a prepared attack. Or prepared action. Yeah, pretty standard. Fighting withdrawal. To move up to your combat movement rate, you do not make target attacks against any particular enemies. You do not deal damage, but you're brandishing your weapon aggressively. You get a +2 bonus to armor class during the round. Cast a spell, blah, blah, blah. Special combat. Naval combat. Yeah, I think we can skip over that. Domains. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we really have to go into it. This is all stuff that's way more extensively written in Axe. And I don't know why I'd really use any of these minor rules. But I guess, yeah, if you're not looking for anything too crazy, it's pretty simple. Magic. What is magic? Corruption of magic. Magical creatures. Cosmology. I just want the spells, baby. Give me the spells. Magic items. Augments are minor magical items or effects that have singular uses before they lose their magical power. Glyphs, potions, totems, scrolls, casting. Yeah, okay. If you are burdened with weight and or armor, you may suffer from spell failure. This is an intelligence test against a DC determined from the chart below. Interesting. Powerful wind has, like, a good chance of fucking up your spells. And yeah, certainly armor is not good. You can wear light armor to have only a 5 DC. And depending on your intelligence, that's pretty negligible, but you'd have to roll every single time you cast a spell, which is kind of annoying. But I suppose most games you roll to cast a spell anyways, so yeah, you could, but light armor's not really valuable. It's okay. Alright, let's just see the spells. This is what we want. Look at all those first level spells. So many. Second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh level spells. Gate. Incendiary Cloud. Summon Deity. Time Stop. Wish. Okay. Let's look at some classics, shall we? Aid. Lasts for an hour. Touch. Spell grants the target a boon from your divine patron. They get a +3 bonus to hit damage and on all saving throws for the duration of the spell. So for 1 hour, target gets +3 to hit damage and its saving throws. That seems really good for a level 2 spell. Pretty nice. Also, if a catalyst is used, the spell will last 12 turns. Now, we didn't really look at catalyst because I just kind of skipped over it. This is a small item that can be held in the hand while casting a spell to dissolve as the spell is cast. Using the right catalyst will improve the spell by triggering a secondary effect detailed in this description. Interesting. Yeah, we didn't really look at catalysts too much. Okay, so they are... Why wouldn't the magic spell list dictate or just tell you which catalysts are usable? I have to scroll through this list and find... And it doesn't say it on this screen, so I have to look through this list specifically to find, like, aid. That's annoying. There's no better... Really? There's no better way of doing that? Oh, there it is. It does say it. I'm an idiot. Dill. Okay, so if you have Dill, it lasts 2 hours instead of 1 hour, which is a pretty big buff. So what does it cost to get Dill? I would hope not much. It has 12 uses. Jesus. For 1 silver. Oh my god. Why would you ever not carry Dill with you? Yeah. Prices assume a temperate climate with good access to trade routes. Some items may be out of season, only available in certain trading cities, or just completely unavailable for sale after character creation. Okay. Alright, anyways. Animate Dead, level 3. Causes a touched corpse to rise as undead under the control of the caster. Unless prepared for a different type of undeath by necrostasis, the undead will rise as a single hit die zombie or skeleton. And if you use Bee Brush, it gets 2 extra hit points. It is a permanent undead, which is kind of valuable. But yeah, single hit die skeleton as a level 3 spell doesn't seem super amazing. Bane, level 1. Brings down a minor curse on the target. They experience an increase in stress and are plagued by a feeling of minor exhaustion that no amount of rest can relieve. Poses a -1 penalty to all rolls made during the duration, no matter what the test. Okay. Well, it's a level 1 spell. What do you expect? Ball of Acid. Level 3 spell. Can be used as a tool or weapon. It will burn through any material that is vulnerable to acid, such as a metal lock. In a round following the casting, the ball can be thrown. Treat such a throw as a touch attack that can be made from up to 60 feet away. The ball explodes on impact, dealing 3d8 damage to the target. It can also be used to make melee touch attacks for 1d8 damage, and that doesn't destroy the ball. And if you use Cinnamon, it deals 2 extra damage per hit. Interesting. Bless, level 1. Touch for an hour, +1 bonus to all rolls made during the duration. Anything involves rolling a d20. Yeah, I mean, that's sort of... It's okay. I mean, it's only one target, so, yeah, you know. Burning Hands, level 1. Spell causes flames to burn brightly around your hands. If you make a touch attack on a target, the flames will deal 2 damage. The flames will also ignite nearby flammable materials. They provide light out to 60 feet. You cannot engage in stealth while this spell is active. If you use Cinnamon, your flaming touch attacks deal an extra point of damage per hit. It seems really not great, right? Okay, I don't think there is an OSE. That's a more modern spell. And I don't know if, yeah, it doesn't have anything like that. It's a little too modern. There's not that many spells in OSE. Yeah, I don't know if there is a equivalent. An axe. Fan of Flames, I guess, would be the closest thing. So that hurls bolts of searing flame in a fan 40 feet long, 20 feet wide. Each creature of the caster's choice within the fan must make a blast saving throw. If they fail, they take 1d8 damage, otherwise they take half. Can also damage structures in the area of effect. I mean, that seems just so much better. I mean, yeah, this lasts for 30 minutes. But you have to make a melee touch attack on a target, and it does 2 damage. It seems really just undercooked. Charm. Spell causes the touch subject to view you as a trusted friend and ally. Works on any humanoid with up to 2 hit dice. If they are being threatened or in combat with you or your allies, they gain +5 to their saving throw. Okay. Yeah, so it lasts potentially a long time. They basically just get a new saving throw once per day. I don't really remember what it said. Default DC is 10 plus caster level or hit die. Okay, so yeah, level 1, it's pretty easy to break out of. You have a 50-50 shot. Mm-hmm. Curative Touch. This is the default sort of level 1 healing spell. You healed for 1d6 hit points. Can also be used against undead as a touch attack, doing 1d8 points of damage. Can be held in the hand for up to 3 rounds until discharged. If you use Comfrey, the spell will heal an additional point of damage per caster level or deal an extra point of damage to an undead target per caster level. Alright, I mean, it's a pretty standard heal, and I don't think Axe is really that different. It'd be like a Cure Light Injury. The touch spell, level 1, does 1d6 plus 1 healing. Yeah, it's pretty much the same. It's kind of the standard. Death Watch gives you the ability to see death auras. Any creature or humanoid that is wounded has a bright red aura surrounding them. Awesome. I mean, it's... Yeah, I don't think there's anything here that's like... Wow, this is unique. And I think a lot of it is just kind of like what you'd expect to find in like an old school Magic list, you know? Which is kind of a bummer for me because I really like Magic. You know, I think like Weird Wizard and stuff has, or Demon Lord, I think those Magic lists are amazing balls of fun shenanigans. But for this style of game, I don't know how I'd ever improve on the Axe spell list. It basically has everything that I would want. And I think on average, it makes Magic fairly powerful. And I also really love that it has sort of domain play in mind for a lot of these spells. So the ranges get to be pretty high. There's a lot of spells that have like group effects or area effects or things like that. And it's just a very extensive list. They do tend to be very wordy, and I have noticed an issue with this when DMing for my group. My nephew likes playing Magic users. He likes Magic. He likes using spells and all that. And so we've been playing, you know, with this spell list. And I give him... What was the spells? Oh, boy. Was it Bewitch Humanoid? No. No, Beguile Humanoid. Right. So Beguile Humanoid is a level 1 spell. And I'm like, yeah, so it's got like 5 paragraphs of text. Like, it's very specific, you know, and it doesn't leave really anything to like interpretation. It's very clear on what it does, but it leads to these big balls of text that you kind of have to like take pictures with your phone just to look, because you're not really writing this all down on your character sheet. It's just too much. Digitally, it's not that big of a problem, but yeah, no matter what, I think you're summarizing it. Whereas if we compare it to, say, just give me a second here. If we compare it to Shadow Dark, and we look at their spell of, say, Charm Person, level 1. That's it. That's all the text. You magically beguile one humanoid of level 2 or less within near range who regards you as a friend for the duration. Ends if you or allies do anything to hurt it, then it notices. Target knows you magically enchanted after it ends. Do you really need to know much more than that? Not really. I mean, this just goes into a lot more detail about, like, how it treats you. And what happens if a fight breaks out, and blah, 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 or these different fringe circumstances. You can't control it like an automaton or give it orders like a hireling, blah, blah, blah. You know, nothing, but spell lasts until dispelled or until 1 day elapses. The affected humanoid will be hostile to the caster if it was forced to risk its life without fair reward or otherwise harmed or maltreated. A bewitched humanoid that was treated kindly and respectfully might remain neutral or friendly. Yeah, maybe. But I think this text just kind of summarizes everything you'd probably care to know for the most part. So, yeah. But my point was, by and large, the Axe spell list is good. And it's hard to beat for me. Not that there's anything wrong with this spell list. Like I said, this is pretty much what you'd expect. And you certainly could do... But it's far more robust than the OSE spell list, as we can see. Like, there's a lot more here. Which is good. But it's just that comparison is the thief of joy kind of thing. You're up against a heavy hitter like Axe here. Fireball, level 3. The ball can be held in your hand without pain or injury. That is pretty unique. Can be burned through any materials vulnerable to flame, such as a wooden door. Can be thrown with touch attack up to 60 feet away. Explodes on impact, dealing 3d6 damage to everyone within 15 feet. 1d6 out to 30 feet. Jesus. Can also be used to make melee touch attacks for 2d6 damage. Melee fireballs. Why not? That's fun. That's a fun little thing. I don't think Axe does that, I gotta say. So they've got something on it. Yeah. There's no melee fireballs in Axe. Alright, anyways. So, yeah, it's hard to say. Jeez. Grease is a 10-foot radius pool. Anyone trying to move through the area must make a dex saving throw against DC 20 to avoid falling down. That's crazy. That's really tough. Shadow Dark has grease, right? No? Wow, Shadow Dark doesn't have grease. It definitely has it in the Novice Magic supplement. Written by, of course, Chubby Funster. Yeah, Grease. There you go. This is his version of Grease for Shadow Dark. Yeah, DC check. DC 18. Dex check. Damn, that is really tough. Well, I mean, Grease is, of course, one of the best spells ever made, as any player of Wrath of the Righteous knows. Heroism. 1 target, +2 bonus to hit and damage, +4 to saving throws to resist magic, +2 to armor class. Pretty good. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we have to go through all these. There's some fun stuff in here. But by and large, it's mostly what you'd expect of an old school spell list. But not bad. Fairly extensive. The judge. The DM advice section. Probably pretty good to read. Sample hex map. There you go. That hex map could carry you through 30 years of gameplay across. Like, you could just keep playing on that same hex map through different campaigns and just change what's in all the different hexes and stuff. I mean, that's all you need. If I was on a deserted island, just give me that hex map, some dice, paper, pencils, done. Done! Also, other people would be good, but yeah. Okay, and gives sample town maps, talks about religion, culture, NPCs, sample dungeon. Again, like that dungeon map, that would fucking carry you through many, many different things. Just stocking it in different ways. A lot of advice here. It can be tempting for the lazy judge to create bland magic items. Why invest the time in exploring the history of a magic sword when you can just call it a +1 sword and move on? We strongly advise you not to engage in that practice. Magic items should be special. They should excite the players and trigger their imaginations. When you create magic items, let your imagination run wild. Think up the concept of the item before you think of the rules that it will affect. Bestiary. Alright, this is the last section I really want to take a look at. Whoops, I skipped ahead. Lot more advice for how to create monsters, how monsters should feel during a game. Wow, this is his bestiary? Oh, okay. That was just the summary. Okay, yeah. That is some interesting artwork for your angel. Angel has 12 hit dice, 19 AC, 2d6 plus 3 magic weapon damage, 4d6 sonic damage. 2 attacks per turn. 11 morale. Giant ant. 2 hit dice, 15 AC, 1d6 bite damage. So yeah, it's not bad. You know, it goes into like how they're encountered, what they might be doing, how they would react on average, what they'll do as far as combat tactics. I mean, it's a decent amount of text for just like an axe beak, which is a 3 hit dice monster. you know, it's an old school bestiary, right? Which means you're not going to have like a list of their abilities or anything like that. You know, this isn't Draw Steel or Pathfinder or 5e D&D. It's always going to boil down to this very simple stat block that shows their hit dice, their AC, their damage, their morale number, how many appear. So the most of the bestiary is the rest of the text here. So usually when I look at a bestiary, what I care most of, the first thing that I'll always check, that I judge most of the bestiary on, is a goblin. If you can make the goblin interesting in some way to me, then you've got me hooked. You know, then it's an okay bestiary at the very least. Goblin. Goblins are vicious little humanoids with expansive tendencies. They breed rapidly and quickly eat themselves out of local supply. For this reason, groups of goblins are often found wandering the countryside simply looking for food. They will eat almost anything, including other humanoids. Party members captured by goblins will quickly become a meal if not recovered by their friends in time. Goblins prefer small weapons like short swords and clubs. They wear armor tougher than leather, they are fairly cowardly, and often retreat from battle. They have 1 hit die, 12 AC, 1d6 weapon damage, 7 morale, 2d6 appear. Yeah, I would say this is not a particularly interesting goblin. Now, if we look at Axe, and we look at their version of the goblin, okay, it's already fairly unique, right? It doesn't look like any goblin you'd typically expect to see. So it's already unique as far as the goblin is concerned. It goes into a lot of like their ecology, the groups of goblins that you're likely to encounter, what they're led by, how many there are, things like that. They might be with dire wolves and stuff. It mentions that 50% of them will be archers, 50% will be warriors. Goblin warriors equipped with leather armor, spear, short sword, shield. Goblin archers equipped with scale armor, short bows, 20 arrows, short sword. Some might field slingers instead of archers. And then it mentions the spoils. So you can harvest their canine teeth, which are usable for beguile humanoid stuff. Then you get all the big stats. Size, speed, armor class of 13, hit dice of 1 - 1, blah, blah, blah. Their expedition speed, how long it takes to train one, their battle rating if you're using them in large armies, the lifespans of goblins, their reproductive rate, the value if they're untrained. If you have a baby goblin, it's worth 12 gold pieces to someone that's willing to buy it. If you have a trained goblin, they're worth 140 gold or more. So if you take the time to grab a bunch of goblin babies and train them up into soldiers, yeah, it could be worth a decent sum. Then, you know, how many they're encountered in, like, the lairs, how big the war bands are, how big a village is, treasure types, the XP values, and some flavor text of a quote. Again, it's like, it's everything I could possibly want out of a bestiary page, right? Like, I don't know how you'd really improve it as far as an OSR game is concerned. Other games that are a bit more modernized, like, you know, Weird Wizard or Draw Steel or Pathfinder or something like that, it's like, okay, I'm looking for different things when I'm looking at a bestiary entry. I'm looking for how fun it is to run, or how fun it is to fight against, what abilities it has, and, you know, special stuff like that. But as far as an OSR game is concerned, this is everything. It just can't be beat. If we look at Shadowdark, just for another comparison, and we go to their goblin entry, it's going to be pretty basic, right? Goblins. Goblins are the smallest and most numerous of the goblinoids, often serving hobgoblins, bugbears, or even hill giants as replaceable lackeys. They live in filthy subterranean warrens built of scavenged materials. Goblin boss rules by cruelty and strength. Shaman wields cryptic sorcery. So you have a standard goblin, standard stats, you know. It does have that it can't be surprised. Goblin boss, much bigger, burlier, also can't be surprised. And then you have Goblin Shaman, which can't be surprised, and it actually has like special abilities for it. Rather than just saying, like, the normal OSR thing of any sort of NPC spellcaster would be, it can cast these spells per day. You know, it can cast Magic Missile, it can cast Alarm, it can cast Mage Armor, whatever, you know. They actually give special abilities here. Bug Brain, Skitter, and Stink Bomb, which are unique to the Goblin Shaman. Those are not normal spells. So that's kind of fun. And yeah, I mean, between these two, then I would say, depending on the type of old school game you want to run, it's kind of hard to get better. You know, I mean, if we really want to go for another comparison, we could look at OSE's version of the Goblin. The normal stats, which are basically identical to Axe stats. It's got some of that stuff about the XP, the number appearing, the treasure type. They have infravision, 90 feet. They hate the sun, -1 to hit in full daylight, which does inform you quite a bit about the creature and makes them a little mechanically interesting. 20% of goblin groups encountered have wolf riders. 1/4 of the group will be mounted on dire wolves. They hate dwarves and attack on sight. You know, that's a very just specific, fun flavor thing. Which means that if there's a dwarf in the group, they're going to be, you know, there's no negotiating with them or anything like that. So that's something to be aware of as the players and the DM. Goblin King, which has 15 hit points. Bodyguards, 2d6 hit points. They do not suffer attack penalties in daylight. King gains a +1 bonus to damage. And the Treasure Hoard is type C when encountering the wilderness or in their lair. So, you know, it's to each their own. And sort of what you're looking for in a monster manual. If I wanted to really pull up another one, I'd grab the Monster Overhaul from Skirples. And that one's really good for just like, for a DM that's trying to just come up with material related to goblins. Like that book is really good for that. Just for like giving you ideas and things like that. Because it'll give you just like, I think that one just has like, I don't remember the specific for the goblin section, but it has a lot of just like random tables and stuff like that related to the different creatures. And just gives like a lot of fun flavor stuff. So that one's really pretty good if you're a DM that's the type of DM that likes to come up with their own material and come up with their own like locations and situations and stuff. That monster manual was really good for that. But yeah, I think if you're running just sort of a simple game, the OSE one or Shadow Dark Bestiary, yeah, it's pretty solid. And then the Axe one just kind of, yeah, kind of covers everything. This one, yeah, it's just like it's just like a step down. Like there's just nothing special here about this entry. It doesn't make me as a DM excited to run anything with goblins. It wouldn't make me as a player excited to fight goblins or encounter them. It's just like, yep, that's like the bare minimum effort to put goblins in your bestiary. And maybe that's harsh. Maybe that's a harsh way of evaluating a bestiary, is just looking at goblins specifically, but that's how I've come to do it. Like, if you can make goblins interesting to me in some way, congrats, you know. I mean, here, Kobold, that's another good example. It's like the bare minimum sort of entry for kobolds. And it's like, there's very little to differentiate this entry from the goblin entry, you know, and just like, surely you can come up with some more exciting stuff than that. Yeah, I mean, you know, I doubt Shadow Dark differentiates kobolds too much. But they get, instead of keen senses, they get dodge. Once per day, an attack that would hit them misses instead. That's pretty fucking annoying. So kobold's certainly more annoying. And you have the kobold sorcerer, which again has unique spells. Scorpion Sting and Spider Swarm. So, yeah, I would say the bestiary here, for me, is definitely disappointing. And it's not going to be like a resource that I come back to for other games or anything. Okay. Yeah, zombie's not very interesting either. Damn. Yeah. The Shadow Dark bestiary, again, it's a little modern for sure. Like, that it has this sort of tendency to give almost every monster type like some sort of unique ability or feature or something like that. Like, you can tell that is somewhat modern. But again, if you look at the OSC Goblin here, they have some unique features. -1 to hit in full daylight. They hate dwarves. They have infravision. You know, that's it's not nothing. They're not just this stat block. They are somewhat unique. If we go and look at the kobold entry, ambush. They set up surprise attacks. That informs a lot about what makes this different from other creatures. They hate gnomes. That's a specific thing, that they just hate fucking gnomes. It's not much. There's not much to go off of here or anything, but it's something. Anyways. Alright, player spellcasters can create potions for about 200 gold pieces per spell level. They can also create scrolls for about 250 gold pieces per spell level. As a general rule, there should be a very limited resale market for these items. Most people don't have the excess funds for such purchases anyway. Only a noble or former adventurer would consider it. You can also have vendors in large cities sell them for 400 gold per level for potions, 500 gold per level for scrolls. Right, so that's very simple, right? That's a really just simple way to do it. 200 gold pieces per spell level for a potion. So, if you want a potion of cure wounds or whatever it was called, that's 200 gold to make, and it heals 1d6 damage. Like, done. That's your healing potion. It's not plentiful. You're not picking up at the general store on your way out of town or anything like that. It's somewhat rare, hard to come by, but it's a simple way of doing it. If we compare that, and I know we do a lot of comparisons, but in this case, if we compare it to Axe, magical research, Axe is far, far, far more complicated. And I really need to sit down and just codify for myself a system that I want to repeatedly use when DMing for magic item creation and stuff. Because I think the Axe system is cool, but I think it's just too much. I think it's just too involved. It requires too much investment and all that. And I also think the prices are just kind of too high. A level 1 spell scroll in this one costs 500 gold pieces to make. And you have to have the component cost, the material cost, and the research cost. So you have to have like 500 gold pieces worth of components, which is taken from monsters. You have to have 500 gold pieces of materials. And then you have to have the 500 gold of like research costs, which is basically just time either for the player character or for someone you're hiring to do it, which could be gold then if you have to pay someone to do it for you. But yeah, the material cost is paid by coin or in kind with precious materials. So you have to have 500 like gold for the material costs, usually, or some sort of equivalent. You have to have 500 gold worth of components taken from like monsters or other magical items or something like that. And then you have to have the 500 gold of research cost, which doesn't necessarily have to be coin if you're doing it yourself or anything. It's just a matter of how long it's going to take then. And that's to make a level 1 spell scroll. Like, it's just... Unless and I've gone over this section, like, 10 times. I don't think I ever misunderstand it or anything. It's just not cheap. It's very robust, very flexible. Like, you can make any magic item that you can possibly think of related to any sort of magic spell, assuming you can gather up enough money and components and everything. It's very robust, but it just seems... Well, for one, it's quite complicated and tricky to get going, especially at lower levels, which I think is part of the point. But at the same time, it's just like, yeah, 200 gold gets you a fucking potion of cure wounds. Done. You know, like, that's just the end of the discussion. It's a lot easier, especially for the group that I DM for. I assume Shadow Dark goes into making stuff, right? Actually, I don't know if they do. I don't know if they mention costs or anything like that for making potions or writing scrolls. They certainly go into just the random way of generating these things. I don't know if they mention making stuff. Interesting. There is a... I just picked this up. This was Chubby Funster's GM companion. Which I threw in this folder. There it is. Game Master Companion. This one might have more information about... No, not quite. Nah. Okay. I'm sure someone has put together information for Shadow Dark about crafting. I'm sure if I search Shadow Dark crafting, we'd find information. Here's a whole PDF someone wrote. Magic crafting system, using the game's carousing downtime rules. So you could just use that. I'm sure there's various articles. Forging new spells. Yeah, you know, there's things you could do, I suppose. I don't know. Like I said, I have to kind of sit down and just sort of think about and decide the way I want to handle crafting. I do think this is not a bad way of doing it. I'm just making it really simple. You can also make improvements to equipment. Okay. Again, pretty simple stuff. Protection effects can be added to armor, arm guards, boots, headgear, accessories, or shields. Creating one of these items, roll D100. 1 to 70, first power level. 71 to 90, second power level. 91 to 100, third power level. It seems a little arbitrarily random, I gotta say. Okay. So... so, like, say you enchant a shield. You have to pick one of these effects. And they're priced sort of... I think based on how, like, common the effect's going to come into play. Universal is the most expensive. Protection against everything, but protection against normal weapons 4,000 plus 20d6 gold pieces. So at power level 1, it's plus 1 to armor class when attacked by the chosen protection class. So that would be the most common. So it'd be plus 1 AC when attacked by any normal weapon. Second power level, plus 1 to armor class in all circumstances, and another plus 2 when attacked by chosen protection class. The item will be priced at 2.5 times the price. And then third is plus 1 in all circumstances. An additional plus 4 when attacked by chosen. The price will be 5 times. Which is interesting because... Well, that's if you're selling it. Well, this doesn't really explain how you... Wait, what? Doesn't really explain how you make this, though. Okay, I guess that was this section. You cannot take an existing armor, weapon, or item and add a magical enchantment to it. It must be a newly crafted item. Most spellcasters will lack the talent to make such items themselves. As such, they'll need to hire an artisan as an expert hireling to perform the task. Exactly what is demanded in terms of facility, wages, raw materials, and so on is subject to negotiation with the judge. See, that's where Axe would just be like, no, there's no negotiation. This is what's all required. Okay. So you have to cast one of these 4 spells. Bestow, Curse, Empowerment, Spell Storage, and Wondrous Power. So Empowerment, I assume is the best one here. The level 5 spell. The spell infuses positive magical properties into an item. When you first learn this spell, you also gain the baseline technique called Improvement Universal. Grants a weapon a +1 bonus to hit. However, if you want the weapon to possess more advanced powers, such as to ignite and deal extra flame damage to the target, you must learn a specialized technique to create a weapon with that effect. You can learn additional techniques to create other kinds of enchantments by searching for notes in the libraries of enchanters. Okay. So, it's a level 5 spell, right? It just requires you to cast the spell. And that's it. And that gets you universal on weapons. And the empowerment technique for that says a large amount of pure platinum ore must be used as part of the crafting process. At least 1,000 gold pieces worth. I get... Hmm. So, okay, you have to cast a spell, you have to put in at least 1,000 gold to platinum ore. Where does this come into play, though? Do I have to spend that as part of making the item, or is this literally just selling it? The reason why I bring it up is because of this thing where it's priced at a lot higher depending on your role. If you have to spend this amount when you make it, you could easily just roll too high and not be able to afford to make it, which suggests that that's not how it works. Oh, I guess, yeah, well, that's what this says. It's demanded in terms of facilities, wages, raw materials, and so on is subject to negotiation with the judge. So I don't think, yeah, I mean, honestly, it's like, what does it cost to forge, like, a sword? Well, a longsword in this game costs 120, so I guess at least that. But beyond that, probably not much. And then as long as you have 1,000 gold worth of platinum ore, and you are available to cast the spell when it's forged, I think that's it. And then it's worth a hell of a lot more. Which makes sense, right? I mean, you have to have a high-level mage and a lot of this platinum ore and everything. Like, it should be worth quite a bit. It's a powerful magic weapon. I also saw for the empowerment that if you use the Catalyst of Rue or whatever, it adds plus 20 to your dice roll, which is pretty significant. Means you have nearly like a 50% chance of having second or third power level, which is a plus 2 or plus 3 to hit. Interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting little system, I think. The problem is that A, you have to be a high-level spellcaster to even consider doing any of this, and B, you have to specifically have, like, those spells. You have to have, like, the empowerment spell in order to make this stuff. And remember, those spellcasters can't pick spells. They have to find them out in the world. So you're sort of at the whimsy of the DM and, you know, on other factors on if you ever find the empowerment spell and get high enough level. Axe is a little bit looser on, like, the requirements. I guess much like the other one, you could just pay a high-level mage to make stuff for you and things like that, or you can find stuff on the market in bigger cities. But I don't think any of this hinges on, like, a specific spell that you need. You just have to be a certain level of spellcaster, and that's based... That pretty much just determines your research rate. I think there is a die roll at the end as well. Yeah, the magic research throw. Unless you have a formula for the item. And that's based on... I don't know what the requirement is for that throw. I don't know, I'm not going to go into all of it. But yeah, I mean, it's mostly the higher level you get, the more powerful you get, the better laboratory you have, all that stuff. It does make it a lot easier and more likely to make powerful stuff. But mostly, like, you know, it's like your research rate. So if you're a level 1 mage, you have a research rate of 5 gold pieces per day. Oh, and your research throw is 16. So to make like a level 1 spell scroll at level 1 would take you 100 days of research. And then you'd have to succeed on a 16 or higher roll. Like, it's pretty unlikely. So you're probably not going to make items at level 1 anyways. But level 5, you know, it takes 10 days to make a level 1 scroll. Then you have to succeed on a 12 or higher, and maybe you've rented a library or something. Maybe there's some other factors that might give you some bonuses. I don't know. I'm not saying I am in love with the axe system. Like I said, it's just kind of a bit too much for my purposes most of the time. And I don't think my players have ever really interacted with it much. But one thing I do like about it is the whole idea of collecting items from monsters in order to use them to make items. That's something that they did sort of engage with when we were running a campaign, and they were killing some creatures out in the wilderness, and then they were harvesting their body parts, because it's like, hey, that, I don't know, let's see, that sea turtle that you killed, you might be able to take its beak and then use that for, like, an arcane armor spell, like, bless, you know, some sort of enchantment on an armor piece or something. Or you might be able to make a swimming potion out of it or something. Like, the sky's the limit. And that's why I love how flexible it is. But I suppose it's just not... No system should really allow for that much spell creation or item creation at low level. So I can't fault Axe too much in that department. It's larger scale stuff where it's like, okay, I'm like level 9, and I'm gonna hire like 30 hunters to go out there and hunt down sea turtles, you know, and collect their beaks and bring them back to me. So I have a giant pile of sea turtle beaks, and I can make this globe of swimming so that my whole party can just swim at max speed, or all sorts of stuff like that. And anyways, yeah. Passive effects: absorption, alluring, concealment, blinding. Yeah, okay. I mean, it's fun. It's good. But again, pointing to Axe, the beauty of the fact that Axe ties everything to its spell list, and its spell list is so robust, it really allows you to just do, like, anything you can think of, you know? Like, you're not tied to these specific categories of empowerments or something. It's like, if there's a spell and you can somehow... you can make a sword that casts that spell, you can make armor that utilizes a spell, a potion, a scroll, a wand, a scepter. You can make a fucking butt plug that shoots fireball if you want, like, whatever, you know? And I hope somewhere out there, there's a game going on where someone made a butt plug that shoots fireball. Let it be so. Wonder side effects can be added to any item that does not fall into an enchantment category, including all clothing items. So this is like, your little toy horse that turns into a real horse. Sort of. Wondrous item will release a blast of energy when the command word is spoken. Deals 2d6 damage to everyone within 20 feet of the item. Common command words are often chosen for this enchantment, allowing the creator to leave the item around as a trap. Comes with 1d4 charges. Okay, yeah, so a lot of these contain charges and uses. Wondrous item idea list. Okay, so just a bunch of random little objects that you might come across and use. I don't see butt plug on this list, so I don't know, man. Spell Storage is a 5th level spell that can infuse an item with magical power. You can infuse 2d4 charges of a 1st level spell into a stick of wood to make a wand. Basic wand, 46 charges of a 1st level spell, or 2d4 charges of 2nd level. Require 500 gold pieces and rare materials to construct. Again, it's a very nice, simple system. Like, I really don't have any faults with it, to be honest. Like, it's just that whole thing of comparison is a thief of joy, and I have to compare it to Axe, which is just so robust. But when do you get a 5th level spell? Let's just find out that. Conjurer, let's say. They get a 5th level spell at level 9. Yeah, so that's high end. I mean, getting any OSR character to level 9 that's a serious campaign you've got going on. So you're not making a wand And at level 9, you can make a fucking... At level 9, you have to have had... You have to have gotten the spell of spell storage. And that's one of your, like, 5th level spells you have. You can then use it to make a minor wand, the 2d4 charges of a 1st level spell. Just want to look at spell storage. Gain the baseline technique called Minor Wand. You can learn additional techniques to create other kinds of wands by searching for notes in libraries of Enchanter. Yeah, so all you can do is the Minor Wand of 1st level spells in a stick of wood. And maybe someday you'll be able to make bigger wands. But you're already level 9, so it's like, it's... Yeah. Random minor potions and poisons. Treasure table A, B, C, D, E, F. And the closing thoughts. And that'll be it. Okay, that is it for Ambition and Avarice 2nd edition. Well, I mean, I guess my feelings at this point should be fairly clear if you've been watching all of this. I don't think there's anything too bad here. And I think if I had been playing, say, OSE for the last 20 years or something, and then it was like, oh, look at this game. Look at this. It's got some interesting ideas. And I read through this book. I mean, yeah, there would be a lot of stuff in here that would be really exciting to me. But the problem is, it just exists in a pretty crowded, funnily enough, a relatively crowded environment. And there's just other games that kind of do things that appeal to me more. I'm not going to say better, because I think there is a lot of good material here. Like I said, he's a good writer. He certainly understands the OSR and, you know, sort of the main facets of it and everything. But it's that usual kind of thing. Like, if I just want a simple OSR experience, I just want to get into dungeons, do some dungeon crawling, and not think about too much, I'm going to go to Shadowdark every single time. Like, I have my issues with Shadowdark. It's not like my go-to game for general campaigns or something. Like, if I want to do a big hex crawl or something, like, it works, but it's not perfect or anything. But yeah, it's just so easy and fluid and flexible and just kind of fun, you know? Like, Shadowdark is really good. And he obviously agrees. He's written a lot of stuff for Shadowdark. And then on the other side of things, if I want a deep, sort of robust hex crawl OSR campaign that involves, you know, a lengthy sort of large number of sessions with domain play potential and that sort of fluidity and flexibility of a big sandbox campaign, I'm going to do my usual thing of Tales of Argosa mixed with Axe. Tales of Argosa is a really good foundation as far as just a basic rule set. I love being able to the roll under system. I like that the classes are somewhat old school, but also they have fun toys and gimmicks that make them all unique and kind of modern feeling. I like I said, that you have sort of a higher starting hit point pool, so it's not just kind of a bloodbath at level 1 necessarily. I like the minor exploits, major exploit system. I like a bunch of things from that game. I like the short rest system. But then Axe gives me just like kind of the best spell list I could ask for a game like this. It gives me... I use all the equipment rules and everything, the equipment lists. And then just like the bestiary is perfect. Like that it's like peanut butter and jelly, the way that I have merged Tales of Argosa and Axe. for me and for my group. Like, it's really hard to improve upon. There's certain things, like I said, like the magic item creation rules that maybe I'd like to change or use some other options or something, but and there's a lot from Axe that I don't use because it's a little bit too much or too complicated, or just bogs things down. You know, like I'm not using the encumbrance, the stone, you know, the weight and stuff. Like I'm not using that. But yeah, between the two, it's just kind of everything I need. So I don't know. You know, I grabbed this just out of curiosity. Like again, like I don't have that many bad things to say about it, and but I also can see why it hasn't really gotten any sort of draw, you know. It's competent, but I don't know if it does anything really that special. And there's certain decisions here that, yeah, it's tough. It's like right in the middle, you know. I think it does a touch too much modern stuff to appeal to like the actual old school grognards. And then also it's just like, it's not enough like Shadow Dark. Like it's a little bit too kind of hefty and unwieldy to appeal to like people coming from 5th edition or something like that, like Shadow Dark does. Like the fact you have to track weight, I think is like probably the single most divisive thing in the entire game. I think that appeals to just such a small section of the gaming population. And the classes are another good example of being like just right in the middle, you know? Like I think there's a little bit too much here, and there's too many classes to appeal to like the really old school players that think there should just be fighter, thief, cleric, magic user. But then there's not enough there to really appeal to like sort of the video game minded population that coming from like Pathfinder or 5th edition. You know, there's not really almost any fun abilities or stuff like that the way that, say, like Tales of Argosa would have, or I don't know, I don't know, Weird Wizard or something like that. I don't know if Shadow Dark really has that either. Like the fighter for Shadow Dark doesn't really get any fun abilities or anything. Like it's very old school. But there are games that do provide a lot more than that. So I don't know. Yeah, it just kind of fits somewhere in the middle, which is not a great spot to be for me, at least. It means that there's just not much reason for me to pick it up and actually play it or run anything with it. I do like something. Like I like the idea of followers. I think that's a really fun concept from level 1 to have these different things based on your class. That's probably one of my favorite things of the system. But yeah, at the end of the day, I just am not drawn to play it. So I guess, yeah, much like OSE, I guess we'll skip out on doing a one-shot. There is maybe one other system that I kind of want to maybe check out, of being like a somewhat obscure OSR related game. I don't want to say what it is. It's definitely much more well known than this, but it's also not really like codified. I don't know if there's even a central like rule book for it. It's like a community thing. Some people may know what I'm talking about. But I kind of want to take a look at it because it has by far the most classes of any RPG in existence, which is pretty fun. But yeah, so that's Ambition and Avarice, 2nd edition. Not bad. I don't know if I could really recommend it to anyone. I don't regret checking it out. I mean, these are, you know, a couple interesting videos I got out of it for only $10. But at the same time, I don't know if I'll really take anything from this, like as far as lifting it for other RPGs. which is kind of a damning thing to say. Usually a lot of RPGs you can take something from it. The only thing I might take is the followers if I really was inclined to do so. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how my family would think about that if I gave them all level 1 followers. Level 1, it's cool to have it at level 1, but it also just doesn't make much sense for level 1. Most level 1 characters in like a fantasy campaign like this are just like, okay, you're heading out from your village and you're on your first adventure, you know? Oh, also, you all have like these followers that have just like latched onto you for some reason. It's just like, I don't know. Maybe like level 2 you get your first follower or something, like maybe. Or level 3, but level 1, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Alright, anyways, I'm parched. My name is Mang. This has been Solo Roll Manging with Ambition and Avarice 2nd edition. And I will see you fine folks next time.